But the most fascinating anomaly to most people is the toasted cars.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. Let's come on to the cars.
1,400 toasted cars, and I say toasted, not burned, because I don't know if they were burned. There was some weird thing that happened. And what I mean by toast is they're toast, they're history.
Right, yes.
You got to get another one. You can't fix this when it's too far gone. But there's 1,400 at least.
And also some of those cars weren't even nearby. I mean, they were, you know, they weren't right under it. They were maybe half a mile away, maybe somewhere further away. I'm not sure now. I can't remember the information on that.
And they appeared to be in spontaneous combustion, something similar to that.
Yeah.
When one of the towers was going away, the dust goes up, blocks out 100% of the sunlight, so you can't see your hand in front of your face.
Yes.
And as this first responder said, thank goodness that car lit up because now I could see where I was. And he was making his way up the street and cars were lighting up as he passed them.
What could cause a vehicle to spontaneously combust? I mean, you know, there aren't any, you know, it hasn't been, there's no fires. I mean, there were fires, but there were no fires.
They weren't hot. That paper didn't burn. All this paper all over the place, it didn't burn.
There was all that paper. It was strewn with paper.
And people assume, you know, because it looks like a fire or you see something glowing that it must be hot. But when you have paper not burning, you realize it's glowing for a different reason.
Yes.
And we do know of something that glows. You know, hot things do glow, but not everything that glows is hot. Think of fluorescent light bulbs versus incandescent light bulbs.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a different process going on.
Yeah, yeah. And also what was interesting about the cars is, again, like the Bankers Trust building that had to be pulled down, there seemed to be a huge rapid corrosion going on the rusting of the cars, and also some of the cars, and you tell me otherwise because you've done the research, some of their soft areas, like the tyres, were still inflated, not burned, obviously, because they were still inflated, but there was some of the window trimmings also intact where the doors would be.
It wasn't heat related, like this police car that's totally toasted in the front end, passenger door, totally toasted right up to that line. The back passenger door looks like in pristine condition from the showroom floor. And the inside totally toasted, like it had some rip-roaring fire in it. That's what it looks like. But the police lights on top, you know, the plastic lights?
Intact.
Intact. So it wasn't that hot.
Yes, and also it obviously had a boundary. It obviously
abrupt boundaries.
Abrupt boundary.
And you don't see that with fire.
No.
With fire, you get black, white, shades of gray in between. You don't get, you know, rip-roaring fire and then a nanometer over pristine condition.
Yeah, absolutely. And also you were talking again, or mentioning, you know, there are various trees in these areas.
Trees didn't get toasted.
The trees didn't get toasted?
Buildings didn't get toasted.
Oh.
The signposts didn't get toasted, neither did the traffic lights. And this one particular road, West Broadway, for 4 blocks north of the Trade Center complex, I think every car had at least some portion, maybe all of it was toasted, maybe some of it was toasted down there. And from the helicopter view of it, that area, none of the adjacent buildings had anything on them. So if someone's going to say the cars were ignited by falling debris, why did it just fall down that canyon between the buildings and only hit the vehicles?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, it just nothing adds up. Certainly not.
And there was a medical technician who was driving on the Manhattan Bridge, 3/4 of a mile away, who said you could feel the heat from the bridge. It could not have been conventional heat because paper wasn't even burning next to the Trade Center.
Yeah. So what's your opinion of that? What's your view of what could
everything there? I didn't have measurements on that day at that time, but everything that happened that day, all of the weird anomalies, are reproduced in a lab.
Yeah. And we talked about, or you've mentioned as well, that wonderful Canadian inventor, John Hutchison.
He went to reproduce some of Nikola Tesla's work.
Yes.
See, Nikola Tesla is no longer here. I'd have to go back in time to visit Nikola Tesla. But here today, I can go visit John Hutchison and see him reproduce all of these effects.
Can you tell us about some of the steel, the incredible anomalies that we've seen in the steel that John Hutchison has reproduced, or that he's talked about, and then we see it there, rather?
There's one particular one that I think is kind of funny. It's a solid steel rod that looks like it's doing sit-ups. And it turns to like Jell-O and it's doing sit-ups. And there's another one that just comes apart, another one that starts fuming and crumbling. And Weird thing, sometimes he just gets levitation, he gets lift or disruption. We had flip cars or toasted cars.
And we
Tend
actually
not
did
to
get
be both.
levitation, didn't we? We
Yes.
had, I don't know if about car, I think there was one or two cars actually levitated, weren't they?
Yeah, flipped, it was parked in the right place, just upside down.
Yes, and I remember seeing one somehow up there in some kind of area, but
Yeah.
like it had been lifted and you know, like a
Tough.
hurricane had lifted it up and whizzed it up there somehow.
That's another interesting thing about hurricanes. Hurricanes and tornadoes, we see things lifted. And most people think of those as, got sucked up or blown.
Yes, yes.
There's, it was April 3rd, this past spring, a bunch of tornadoes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, yes.
And there's these trucks that just levitated up, a couple hundred feet in the air maybe, at least 100 feet in the air. Big tractor-trailer trucks that just went floating up, and then they fell out of whatever field we're in and came down.
Right.
But some of them didn't even crash land, they were set down gently.
Oh, right.
And that's the type of levitation.
Yeah.
It's a field effect.
Yes, I know that there was Hurricane Erin off New York.
Oh, what a coincidence.
Off New York. And I can't remember the details now. Perhaps you can help me with that one. How far the Hurricane Erin was before it did a right angle turn all by itself.
Head out of town.
I mean, it's
For 4 days,
unbelievable.
it was headed in a straight line towards New York City. It was born on September 1st,
Yes.
2001. It actually had more cyclonic energy in the storm system than Hurricane Katrina. It was, anyway, the 4 days prior to 9/11, headed towards Manhattan directly, and that's unusual. Usually they swish up the hill of the
Yes.
coastline, not
And
perpendicular
it's
land.
funny how we all heard loads about Katrina, and I don't
Everything
actually
else.
think I heard anything about Erin.
Oh, entirely. So here it is. The Weather Service has these text messages
Yes,
of,
yeah.
they keep on record, and they think it's going to turn around. This is 4 days before 9/11. They think it's going to turn around that day, because there's this high pressure system moving in from the west, and they think that'll turn around.
Yeah.
Doesn't turn around day one. Okay, it's going to turn around day two. Doesn't turn around day two. Going to turn around day three. Doesn't turn around day three. Going to turn around day four. Thank goodness it did, because there's no more room. It was right off the end of Long Island,
Yeah.
and it was close enough that you get field effects from hurricanes.
Yes.
People
yeah.
feel storms coming. Birds
Yes.
know to head for cover.
Absolutely, yeah.
The three major airports surrounding Manhattan, LaGuardia Airport, Newark Airport, and JFK Airport, all three of those airports recorded thunder on 9/11.
Right, interesting. Do you think there is any possibility that I've heard, I don't know, it was you talking about it or another piece of information about how hurricanes can be used like a Tesla coil in a way to somehow generate a further field or
Well, that's
expand
sort
it.
of what they are. They go round, round,
Right,
round.
okay,
round
so
with
I'm not
convection.
understanding it completely.
So
right.
you have the static field outside of it, and that's what
Yes.
people feel a storm coming.
Yes,
There's an electrical energy type field around it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what effect could that have had on 9/11? Could it have been used in any way as a control mechanism for, being
It could
party
have-
to?
Well, I know how John Hutchison creates these exact same effects.
Yeah.
All the same effects on a much smaller scale.
Yes.
He uses a Tesla coil or a Van de Graaff generator to create a static
All right.
field.
Yeah.
And within that static field, he interferes various radio frequency signals.
Yes.
And that creates these effects. I can't say for certain what this was used for.
No.
It could have been used for it.
Yes.
I wasn't in the control room.
It's just unusual, isn't it? I mean, and also,
But to have no one know about it, that's the most bizarre part of it.
and the fact that it went off at 90 degrees.
Then it made a U-turn, head out of town.
I mean, yeah, fed up with this
it
one.
Stayed, it stayed hurricane status throughout
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
It dropped down to Category 1, packed up, and stayed at Category 1 until the 17th, I think.
Right, okay. And again, we hear nothing about it.
And it was that close. I have a photograph looking eastward at Manhattan. You see all the fuming coming up?
Yes, yeah.
It was on 9/11, and you see the outer bands of Hurricane Erin off in the distance. Another thing that few people realize is that, I think it was the 14th and 15th when George Bush went to visit the
Oh,
site.
right,
Remember it was
yes.
raining?
Okay, yes.
That was the backside of Hurricane Erin.
Oh, right. Oh, interesting. And I do remember reading also, and probably in your book, that the astronauts at the International Space Station could see the terrorist carnage, but could not see hurricane.
We're looking up and down the East Coast to see if there's anything else we can see. And they had to, carefully arrange their video camera to not get the clouds on the right and to avoid the hurricane.
I know. I mean, for goodness sake. Okay. All right.
It's just curious.
I know.
It's just interesting. Another coincidence that
it's very curious. I tell you what's also very curious are these unusual holes that appeared in some of the glass, the windows, and some of the buildings. They were kind of round.
I categorize both of them differently. There's the rounded holes in the window glass.
Yeah.
Sometimes only in the outer pane, while the inner pane is still intact. If you throw
Do you know what? I hadn't realised that either. That's interesting.
It's bizarre. You throw a baseball through a window, it makes a spiderweb pattern.
Yes.
I'd love to see a high school student say, teacher, the physics teacher, my baseball makes a spiderweb pattern. How do you do this?
Yeah.
It turns out you do it with longitudinal waves. That, too, has been reproduced in the lab.
Yeah.
That longitudinal waves make rounded holes through window glass.
Right. So, but
It's a different process than regular breakage. Regular breakage, glass is brittle.
Yes.
Brittle material is weak in tension. So if you hit something, the outer surface is being stretched and it shatters.
Okie doke. So what about then those much bigger holes in the round holes?
They look like a post hole digger.
They do, yes. They're really.
There's an analogous thing that John Hutchison has in his samples.
Oh, okay.
Where it looks like imagine a line in space where at a radial distance from that line, everything is just dustified. And he has an example of this in a solid piece of aluminum, an aluminum bar, and it doesn't start and stop, it doesn't go through the ends, it just starts and stops in the middle of the thing. And he's got a hole from the surface down in. You look and it's this hole bore through there, but how does that happen?
Yeah. So these are reproducible. We've seen it, you've seen it, but we don't know yet how this was created.
People often ask, well, where was the gizmo?
Where's the gizmo?
And what I often tell people is, you have a cell phone?
Yeah, of course.
When you make a cell phone call, do you know where the tower is that you're connected to?
No.
You know that you're within range.
Yes.
That's all you care about.
Yeah.
You have to have a cell phone that works, and you have to be within range of the cell phone tower.
So do we think...
And so if you have something that kind of covers the area, like a cell phone tower, a static field,
Okay.
and you interfere whatever within that static field.
Right. We're going to bring in Andrew to help us discuss this further in just a few moments. Thank you, Dr. Judy Wood.
Thank you.
And we'll be back for the next section.